In this video, I'm going to help you understand how to translate the next section of our story in medias res. Remember, as always, the first thing you want to do is read the entire sentence. Dido regina Cartaginis aeneam cum suis sociis ad caenam invitavit. It is always useful to find all of the prepositional phrases in the sentence. This particular sentence has a prepositional phrase starting with cum. Cum requires the ablative case. I notice that both suis and sociis are both in the ablative case. And then right after sociis is the preposition ad. So I know that my prepositional phrase ends with sociis. A new prepositional phrase begins with ad and ends at caenam because the verb invitavit is never going to be part of a prepositional phrase. Now the words that are left over make up the main part or the main idea of the sentence. I notice right away that Dido looks the same in the sentence as it does on the vocabulary list. So does Regina. That means they are in the nominative case and will be the subject of the sentence. Invitavit is my verb. Remember that verbs, when we translate into English, always come after the subject. Let's take a closer look at the verb invitavit, which comes from invito, invitare, invitavi. Do you notice that these letters, I-N-V-I-T-A-V, are what appear in the verb form invitavit in the sentence? This means that our verb form is in the perfect system, either the perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect tense. The IT tells me which of those tenses it specifically is. When I look at the noun Cartaginis and I see that IS, I also see that it is on the vocabulary list. It's the second word in the entry. That means that it's the genitive. Genitive nouns will go with the noun that comes in front of it or the noun that comes after it. We learned in the very first part of the story that Dido is the queen of Carthage. So that would indicate to me that Cartaginis should go with Dido and queen. More importantly, when I look at the name Aeneas, I see that it ends with am, and am is an accusative ending, and that means that when I use it in a sentence, it's going to be the direct object. So when I read this sentence and put it into English, I'm going to begin with my subject and the genitive, then I'm going to move to the verb and then the direct object. I can add the prepositional phrases in where I think they make the most sense. Now on to the next sentence. I didn't want to erase my picture, just the words, but here we are, back again. Here's sentence 2. Quod regina Dido audiverat de Aeneae ausa per bellum, in caena Aeneam interrogabat de bello Troiano. This sentence is much longer and is going to require that we find all of the verbs in the sentence and decide where to divide it in half. There are two verbs, audiverat and interrogabat. That means that my sentence has two parts. The question is, where should those two parts divide? The answer is in this sentence that they are going to divide after bellum. There is no verb at the end of that, and I'm using the comma and some common sense to sort of help me decide where the two words should divide. Now, let me look at the first part of the sentence in the green brackets and see if there are any prepositional phrases. I notice right away the preposition day, which must be followed by an ablative case noun. The first ablative case noun I see is außer. Then I have the preposition per, which must be followed by the accusative case. Bellum is in the accusative. Quod is just a conjunction that means because. Regina, Dido, audiverat are the main ideas in my sentence. Because explains to us how this idea is related to the sentence that comes after it. Regina and Dido are both in the nominative form. I know that because I can see them on my vocabulary list. I'm more interested in looking at the verb with you. Audio, audira, audivi, the verb to hear. Do you notice how the verb in our sentence begins with audiv, just like the base of the third principal part? That means that audiverat is in either the perfect, the pluperfect, or the future perfect. The specific tense will depend on what tense erat represents. So we're going to start with our subject and go to our verb in this first clause. Because Queen Dido had heard, and now you need to remember that day can be translated as about. So translate day as about. Now let's look at the second clause in this particular sentence. It starts with in Cana Aeneam interrogabat de bello Troiano. So I know already that my verb is interrogabat, and I see de again, which must be followed by ablative, and so that will take it all the way to the end of the sentence. Also, I see the preposition in followed by the ablative cana, in dinner, or you can even translate this as at dinner. But check out the name Aeneas. Do you see how it ends with the letters am? Am is always the accusative case. That means direct object, and that means that in English it must come after the verb. So when I use Aeneam in the sentence, I can't use it until I use interrogabat. And that means that I will need to look at the T on the end of interrogabat to get my subject, he, she, or it. Because Dido is the one who invited Aeneas to dinner, we're going to assume that she is the one also asking the questions and make she the subject rather than he. You can figure out Aeneas dixit without any trouble. Let's take a look at the next sentence. Fabula bona regina, de bello Troiano, et de via supermara, et longa et misera est, verba non bona sunt. Tamen fabulam tibi libere nerabo. So this is a really long sentence, but you can handle it as long as you remember to think about punctuation and also where verbs and prepositional phrases are. First of all, let's find the verbs. The first verb that I see is est, and then I also see sunt. I also see this handy semicolon, so that means that the beginning of the quote to the semicolon must stay together, and here's my third verb, nerabo. Verba to sunt is a clause. Tamen is a conjunction. So fabulam tibi libere nerabo should stay together. The reason that bona regina is separated by commas in this sentence is not because it's talking about Fabula, but because Aeneas is speaking to her. So this is an example of the vocative case. Aeneas is addressing the good queen. Pay attention to the fact that in this first clause there are 2 prepositional phrases, 3 actually. De bello Troiano, de via, and super mara. The ets should not be translated as and, but both and. So we say both in front of the word long, which is longa, and then we say and in front of the word misera, which means sad. Fabula is my subject, so good queen, the story, and then I'm going to go directly to my verb is. Well, not directly, because what I want to do is I want to tell her what the story is about, and that's where the about prepositional phrases come in. About the bello Troiano and about the via super mara. What way are we talking about? So those stay together. Then we put in the est, and then we can use the adjectives both longa et and misera after is to describe the story. This next little part of the sentence is easy if you simply take sunt, which means are, and put it right after the subject, which is verba. Now let's take a look at the last clause in that long sentence. The first word I notice is fabulam, which ends with am, and am, right, is the direct object. So that means I can't use it until after I use the verb. What does it mean when you see O on the end of the verb? Remember, it means that the subject is I. What tense is the verb in when it ends with bo? Take a look at your blue chart. And don't forget about the pronouns that we learned for the word you. Tibi is the dative of you. So this is to you. So now I've helped you through the bulk of this paragraph. I'm going to let you use footnote number 4 to see if you can figure out how to translate the very last sentence in this passage.